Today on the Solid Ground live stream, we spoke with Jennifer Lahl, filmmaker and founder of the Center for Bioethics and Culture. We had a wonderful conversation with Jennifer, and we had a few feed issues as reported by people in the live chat. So I am replacing the live stream with this recording of the conversation. I hope you enjoy it, and if you would like to follow up on Jennifer's work, there are links in the description. Thanks so much, and see you next week. Yeah, Deborah, you're the only odd man out.
One of these things is not like the other. Yes.
That's right. I think that's how we started our last conversation with you, Jennifer. We started out by...
It's a frequent topic of conversation.
Yeah. It's Gen X. It should just be Jenny X. I don't know. Jennifer X.
Forget Jenny down the block or Jenny in the hood.
Yeah.
Happy Monday, everybody. It's October 14th, and here we are live with Jennifer Lahl joining us again. This is really awesome that we get to have another conversation with you, Jennifer. And Jenny, you missed the last time we had Jennifer on, so I'm glad you're here for this one.
Yeah.
And we were just talking right before we went up about Columbus Day. It is Columbus Day. It's also some people are trying very hard to rebrand it as Indigenous Peoples Day. And I saw some people posting on Twitter about that this morning. And it reminded me that one of the final straws for me when I was going to graduate school, I had just had this grievance that I'd filed rejected and my appeal rejected. And I was just so frustrated with this program. And they'd been trying to make me sign this civility pledge in order to keep taking my classes. And I had this, I was so infuriated. And it was October 12th last year, or no, 2 years ago, 2022. That I received this big, long screed about Indigenous Peoples Day. And so I wrote back to the chancellor, and I was really quite frustrated. If I have it, I think I have it up right here. And I finished with, I would like my money back for the courses I've taken at Antioch. I've been baited and switched. I enrolled under the false pretext that this was a serious academic institution, only to find that it's entirely driven by social change ideology. A degree from this institution would be worth far less than the financial investment it takes to acquire. I would like to know how to initiate the process of filing for a refund. And I was so pissed. And this was after like a back and forth with the chancellor over his screed for Indigenous Peoples Day. I think I'm just going to post this to Substack. I think this argument might be interesting to some people, so I'll post that up. But that's my Columbus Day speech for everybody.
Get your money back.
Yeah, really.
Did you get your money back?
It's a long conversation. I have had dealings with the school, but it's complicated. But yeah, that was only one of many complaints that I had about what's going on in higher education, really,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I know that kind of takes us far afield of the juicy topics that we can get into today. So, Deborah, would you like to start us off with the Solid Ground intro?
Yes. Oops. Anything on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice and/or authoritarian measures such as COVID mandates in their workplace, university, children's school, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join one of our groups for only $5 a month. To find out how to join our community, please visit solidgroundsupport.com. And please note that Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such.
Jenny and Jennifer, you haven't met each other before, have you?
No, but I'm aware of your work, Jennifer, and I've been following you for some time. So I have a lot of admiration for what you're doing. Actually, you helped me see the issue very clearly and kind of work. I had sort of just instinctive misgivings about the surrogacy issue, and you really helped clarify that into like a more sort of solid opposition. So I'm very familiar with what you do. It's great.
Great. I often say I don't really care what the law says you can or can't do, because if I can just change people's minds, then people won't do it, even if they can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, Jennifer, your work spans quite a a big, what's the uniting topic, would you say? It's bioethics, but mostly around reproduction and fertility and sex, really. Is that how you would put it?
I guess I would put it more in the medical ethics space. We obviously, as an organization, you can't spread yourself too thin and take on every single issue that involves in medical ethics. Like early on, we actually dabbled a little bit in physician-assisted suicide, and that as certainly a medical ethics issue that's becoming even more prominent again today. One of our documentary films is a short called Compassion and Choice with the Big Rubber Stamp Denied. It was a young woman, a mother of several small children, who basically was fighting for treatment, but it was quite expensive, but they would pay for her assisted aid and dying medication. So,
wow.
But it's the dignity of the human person. What does it mean to be human? What is the role of physicians in taking care of all of us, whether it be infertility, whether it be terminal illness, whether it be the transgender issue. So, I always say it's, our work is trying to get good doctors to behave well.
We sort of scratched the surface last time on some of the medical advances or technological advances that are being used in order to assist reproduction. And something that you talked about when we met the first time for a conversation back in February was the problems that you see, the physical health problems that you see more commonly in IVF babies. And it made me think, what are we dabbling in when we're messing with human beings this way, when we're altering and manipulating human eggs and sperm? Are we doing some things that maybe we don't understand what complications can come from that down the line?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the whole just because we can, should we? And there's nobody saying should we, there's just, well, we can, and we have this technology, therefore it's sort of this blind security that any kind of progress, any kind of technology is good. You get I just got my new phone. I got the latest version. My husband's like, what iOS are you running on your phone? I'm like, I don't know. But we sort of just trust technology, and if it's here, it's progress, and progress by definition is good. And that's not always the case, And yes, when we think about when you go to the grocery store or you go to the farmer's market. Are you going to go get the frozen peas been in the freezer section for God knows how long? Or are you going to go to the farmer's market and go, oh, those look really wonderful. Those look so fresh. Those look so organic. Those look so healthy. Those look so natural. We're all up in arms about, GMO food and cloned meat and all this kind of stuff, which we don't even know what we're consuming because it doesn't have to be labeled. You could be buying hamburger meat at your local grocery store and it's, genetically modified cloned cow. I don't know. But nobody stops to say, demand, this sort of transparency. And it's the same in technology as it relates to making children. We have a couple of years ago, it was a case where a young couple, a married couple, adopted a frozen embryo. The whole area of frozen embryo, human embryo adoption, which, it's a really difficult rub because the pro-abortion people don't want to humanize the embryo, so they don't want to use words like adoption, because if you're adopting something, that means it's a person. And then, of course, the pro-life side likes to use the language of adoption because it humanizes the frozen embryo. And I want to say, should we even be freezing embryos? But this one particular couple adopted a frozen embryo that had been frozen longer than the age of the people that
Sorry.
And I don't remember what the age was. So say the couple, they were 26. The embryo they adopted had been frozen longer than 26 years. And nobody's asking, what's the long-term damage?
Oh my God.
Would you eat meat in your freezer that had been frozen for 26 years? Would you eat peas or whatever, And I've used that example before in pro-life. People go absolutely crazy because they think I'm equating a human embryo to peas, and I'm not. I see that a pea is different than an embryo, but I just use it as an example that we would not consume food, but we would take an embryo that had been frozen for 26 years, thaw it out, implant it, let it come to birth without wondering, is there something that's we're going to see down the road when we weren't meant to be frozen at all, let alone frozen for such a long period of time. And so there's no sense of, and we're caught in this huge presidential debate right now. Everybody wants to protect IVF. Donald Trump is, I'm going to protect IVF. And the people on the left, Patty Murray, Tammy Duckworth, they've got this right to build a family. We're protecting all this because it's progress and we want to help people that want to have children. And this is the way we help them. And I'm saying, there's a lot of problems here. So you may help somebody, but you may also harm a lot of people too.
Where did the conversation start with threatening IVF? Was there some big talk of actually banning IVF or restricting it?
To Project 2025, maybe? I don't know.
No, oh gosh, it started way before that. It started on the Democratic side. Patty Murray, who's she's your senator in Washington State, Leslie. I don't know if anybody else on the Washington State, but years ago she introduced a right to IVF for wounded vets and for the military, and for this to become a military benefit, so that the military people who needed egg donation, who needed surrogacy, who needed IVF, whatever, would have that as one of their military healthcare benefits. I say it's all linked to everybody wondering if Roe versus Wade was going to be overturned. Because once Roe versus Wade was overturned and everything went back to the states, and then everybody got everybody in my mind, I hate when I use words like everybody, people going, I did it. People were worried about what's going to happen to those frozen embryos. Are they now protected? Are they now considered? They can't be terminated. They can't be aborted. They can't be discarded. They can't be, sold and chopped up and made into croutons for your salad or whatever, So I think in my mind, I kept telling all the groups that I worked with that you would label as pro-life that this is coming. And it's to your peril to ignore that this is coming. And then lo and behold, it came. Roe versus Wade overturned. We had that sticky case down in Alabama it was a case. So this is a little complicated. Bear with me. Lots of states, even my state, have what's called death of a minor. I can't believe it. It's basically an intentional death of a minor. So like Scott Peterson, who was the big case in California with Lacey, his wife, who was pregnant, and he killed her. He's serving life in prison for a double murder. So it was it was not an accidental death. It was an intentional death of Lacey and her unborn child. So there's these kind of laws that are on the books, and Alabama has that kind of law. And there was 3 couples in Alabama that had their embryos frozen in fertility clinics in Alabama. Some random guy who was a patient in this hospital stumbled in to the fertility wing of the hospital and took these embryos out of the freezer, dropped them, whatever, destroyed them. So these 3 couples who wanted these embryos, these were not unwanted, these are, the wanted child case, filed a lawsuit using this legislation that protects, because the law protects a pregnant woman. And their argument was, it doesn't matter if it's in the womb or if it's in a freezer, we want this baby, we want this embryo. The Supreme Court, the lower court, rejected their claim that this legislation protected frozen embryos. So they went to the Alabama Supreme Court, and the Alabama Supreme Court ruled in the favor of these couples, saying location doesn't matter. It doesn't, and this is, again, gets back to technology. Way back when, we didn't have the ability to freeze embryos. You were either pregnant or you weren't pregnant or you had a baby. So now technology allows us to freeze. And I think the court ruled correctly. They just looked at the law in the books and said, it doesn't matter the location of the unborn child, whether it's frozen embryo or in the womb. And the doo-doo hit the fan when that ruling came out. And that was just within the last 12 months. So this is a new ruling. And at that point, that really tipped off, oh, we got to protect IVF. Because now that all the fear mongering happened, you're not going to be able to have IVF in Alabama. It's like, wait a minute, until these embryos were accidentally, intentionally, whatever, destroyed, fertility medicine was practicing just fine in Alabama. There was no reason to say that this intentional death of these minors would affect just regular old IVF practices. And at that moment, you saw right and left, Carrie Lake on the right, Kellyanne Conway on the right, lots of the big, pro-life right talking heads came out. Well, we're going to protect IVF too, and the left as well. So we ignored what was coming. People like me that was trying to tell these people, they just didn't think, I don't think they thought it was going to be a problem. And
was it treated just like a murder? Is it considered a homicide, or is it something else?
I'd have to look at the exact, and I'm apologizing because I'm blanking on the actual title of this, this legislation. If somebody wants to Google it really quickly while I'm yammering away. But it's the intentional killing of a minor. And so it's a minor, whether it be a 5-year-old, whether it be Lacey Peterson with the baby unborn in her womb, whether it be these people that had their embryos frozen.
This is so interesting that we could have such a different perspective on something like this. Like destroying some embryos is a killing of a minor, and abortion is fine. And the only difference is that what the mom wants to have happen. Like we could do that with a 3-year-old kid. Like
it's wanted versus unwanted.
Yeah.
That's the line. Is this a wanted child? This is a wanted embryo. Is this a wanted, pregnancy? Or if it's unwanted, and unwanted because
it's unpersoned, if it's unwanted, kind of.
It's not whether Scott Peterson wanted the baby. It's whether Lacey wanted the baby. It's the mother decides if it's wanted or unwanted. And, honestly, most abortions that happen in the United States are on the unwanted pregnancy side. They're not life of a mother. They're not life of the unborn. They're not, it's not a case of a stillborn where you have to go in and remove the fetus because it's stillborn inside the woman's womb. It's, it hinges on wanted or unwanted. And, we could quibble about the choices of when it wanted or not wanted. Wanted or not wanted might be because of rape. Wanted or not wanted might be because it's Tuesday and I don't want to be pregnant on Tuesday, or I don't have the money to be, it could be whatever, fill in the blank.
This reminds me of something I haven't thought about in over 20 years. In the early 2000s, I worked as a newspaper reporter in Rhode Island for the Providence Journal. And I came upon this very weird case of a local man. He called up our bureau and I answered the phone, and he lived in my area. That was my beat. And he told me that he was getting a divorce, and that one of his claims in the divorce was that he wanted custody of the frozen embryos that he and his wife had created in happier times. And I wrote this massive story about it. It was on like the front page of the Providence Journal. And it was, partly it almost became like a joke, like a novelty story, because number one, he was, it was such an odd thing to do. It was such almost like gadfly thing to do, to demand custody of embryos. Is like, well, you're a man as well, so what are you going to do with these embryos? Where are you going to put them? But also because when I was interviewing him and he was telling me why he wanted this, he said, little Frosty deserves a shot.
Well, there was the famous case with Sofia Vergara, the actress, who was then in a relationship with Nick Lowe. And they had frozen embryos, and then of course they broke up. And he lobbied to get them. He lost. She got custody of the embryos. I think she had them destroyed or let them fall or whatever. But I remember talking with him, saying, "Well, what are you going to do?" He goes, "Well, I'm going to hire a surrogate."
Right.
That's the solution. But, yeah.
So it seems in all. Oh, go ahead.
No, Deborah, go ahead. I was just going to say I found the case, so I can say a few things about it after.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. What is it called again?
Let's see. What is it called? This is just an article on the Alabama Supreme Court case, so I don't see the title of it right now. I'll look and see if I can find it, and then Deborah, you go ahead.
Oh, I mean, this is probably obvious, but I'll sort of state it. I mean, all of this is about what these adult people want, and not like, oh, you're going to have me be born after I was in a freezer and we don't know how that's going to affect my development. I remember even just first hearing about IVF and just thinking about the psychological ramifications of like not being contained in a womb. I was just like, are these people going to have attachment issues psychologically? Are they going to like we aren't made to be in a tube somewhere? I don't know. I mean, just on a real gut level, I wondered about that. And are people thinking about, well, it's like, I want kids, I want them, but what about the offspring? I mean,
It's a wrongful death statute. So it's a wrongful death. Again, it gets back to wanted, it's a wrongful death and it's wrongful death of a minor. So, but this, what we opened up with, progress and technology, and we just sort of grab onto all this new progress is great, and we don't realize, the unintended consequences down the road. In the United States, we have over 1 million frozen embryos.
wow.
In the United Kingdom, it's over 2 million. So,
Wow.
there's nobody on Capitol Hill lobbying to stop freezing human embryos and to actually deal with the ones that we have frozen. Germany has federal law that's been on the books for a long, long time. And I think it's, post their horrible history with Nazi Germany and, the Nuremberg and what they did. So it's illegal in Germany to freeze a human embryo. It's a federal law, and it's like, some embryo protection act or something.
Wow. So they can't,
You can
how do
create
they do IVF?
You can create 3 embryos in Germany for IVF purposes, and they all must be implanted, which I'm not a big fan of implanting 3 embryos. I mean, that's dangerous too. But at least they recognize the problem of not addressing creating them and freezing them and then leaving them. So
It seems like a lot of this comes back down to the idea of like, just because we can, should we?
yeah.
And what is the limiting factor for medical technology? Is there a limiting factor? If we used to have the Hippocratic Oath,
Yeah.
and now apparently that's pretty meaningless.
Yeah.
So it's just what you can get away with legally. It's just law, and law is such a blunt instrument.
Yeah. And, back to my analogy of, do you want peas that have been frozen for 15 years, or do you want the farmer's market peas? We know that when you aggressively stimulate a woman's ovaries to get lots of eggs, which is how you create lots of embryos that end up in the freezer, you're getting poor quality eggs. Because the female body is a very finely tuned machine that, has this whole cycle that ends up with an ovulation of usually 1 egg, occasionally 2, very rarely 3 in the case of natural twins or triplets. When you use poor quality eggs to make embryos, you get poor quality embryos, which is why we make so many in the lab. It's subjective again. They look at the good ones and they freeze the lesser suboptimal ones because they want a shot at achieving a pregnancy. So they'll think, well, these look better meaning by cell morphology, by cell division, just looking under a microscope at the embryo as it's developing in those first few days. And it just makes sense because you're not mimicking nature. You're doing some, synthetic manufacturing method of, manipulation. And there's one very important study I quote it often, and it actually looked at the, once an embryo is created, it's usually in the laboratory for about 2 or 3 days before it either gets implanted or it gets frozen or it dies. There's 3 things. And in those 3 days, this one study looked at the exposure of, room air is 20%. We're breathing room air, we're breathing 20% oxygen. But in your body, it's 100%, right? So when they put the little oximeter on, I want to see 100%. The embryo is 100% oxygen. But for 3 days, it's in 20% oxygen.
Oh my gosh.
It's exposed to light. When it's in your womb, it's not exposed to light. It's not exposed to dramatic temperature changes or the noises of an environment that you can imagine. And they actually looked at all this, and they can't prove, but they said, we wonder if that's why so many IVF cycles fail. So many
Wow,
embryo transfers
yeah.
don't work, because of this first 2 or 3 days when it's exposed to things it should not be
It
exposed
shouldn't be.
So interesting.
I knew that stimulating a woman's ovaries to produce lots of eggs was bad for the woman's body. I didn't know that it was bad for the eggs. I thought that the eggs were in there already, just sitting there waiting to come on out. But you're saying that there's actually something that happens with that process that actually degrades the quality.
Yeah, and there's so much that we don't understand either. There's this whole phase of when a woman ovulates one egg, thousands of follicles are doing their thing, but one egg comes out, and there's this, they call it, I think, a recruitment phase. I call it the cheerleaders. All these follicles are cheering. It's like the sperm, there's all these sperm, but one's the lucky one, It's not like all the sperm make it, for some reason, and we don't know why that is, and you can watch it, and the same with ovulation. The woman's follicles are doing their thing. The cheerleaders are all cheering, who's going to make it? And then boom, one egg pops out. Not a bunch of eggs, unless you're super ovulating her. Then you're forcing a bunch of these eggs. But it's not supposed to naturally work that way. It's supposed to be this orchestrated, biological thing that happens, and then one egg is the one that makes it out. And then when you ovulate, you don't watch ovulation and then here comes hundreds of eggs. You watch all this happen, and which is why women are born with so many, because we know for every ovulation cycle there's a lot of these other follicles that are recruiting and cheerleading on in the great orchestra of ovulation, that don't make it to become, the egg. So
It's amazing.
yeah, and and meanwhile you have all these platitudes of we got to protect IVF,
Right.
and people say to me, "Don't you care about people that can't have children?"
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I care about women's health. I care about children's health. I care about doctors not wanting just to make fistfuls of money because
Well, are we
fertility doctors,
entitled?
are they
Are
what?
we entitled to children? Is someone
Yeah.
entitled to a child? And this is something that I watched Anonymous Father's Day, which was
Yeah.
really great, and Big Fertility also. I just watched both of those over the weekend. And I think, was it Big Fertility? The woman that you interview, she has been a surrogate 3 times, and she describes this process, and they're all difficult experiences for different reasons. But one thing that comes through is the lack of attachment between the intended parents and the babies. There definitely is a commodification and sort of a remove. This is a product. This is something. The one woman, the second birth, I think the mother and father ended up divorcing, and the mother doesn't even see the child anymore. Is completely out of the child's life. Just removed herself from it. The third one, the children weren't what they wanted. They wanted a boy and girl twins. They ended up with boy twins. And so the parents took off and just kind of abandoned the whole situation and family. And it makes sense. That's not your baby.
Yeah.
You don't, nature has orchestrated mothers and babies in this very particular way to make mothers fall in love with their babies. That's why so here's something from my own life. I've got 4 kids. I can remember thinking that my babies were so beautiful, like so beautiful. No, I've really got the Gerber baby. This baby is the most beautiful baby that has ever been. Like, look at this baby. This is like true human perfection. And then like 2 years later, you go back and you look at the baby pictures and you're like, oh, she was kind of goofy looking. Why did I, like she's just, they're still beautiful. They're still my babies, but that whatever is happening hormonally in your body to make you fall in love with that little creature is so powerful that even your own self a little while later, you can look back with a little bit more of that dispassionate appraisal. So for someone to think that they can just orchestrate a pregnancy and birth and simulate parenthood by taking someone else's child or by taking a child that wasn't born from their own body. I mean, fathers have more trouble bonding with their babies. It's really common for you to hear fathers say, I loved the baby when they were small, but when they were about 2 or 3, that's when it really kicked in for me. I could really play with them or her, and I really started to bond with the baby in a different way. So that first couple of years, it's meant to be the person whose body made that child and that child.
Mm-hmm.
And that how can we keep pretending that you can just dismiss all of that?
And it's cruel, I think. I mean, it's cruel to, in Big Fertility, you're speaking of Kelly. And, it's funny because when I was, back in the olden days, when we would release a film, we would actually do screenings, we'd hire, rent theaters and do that. And I was so taken aback that the audience overwhelmingly had very little sympathy for her.
Mm-hmm.
She did it once, it went horribly wrong. She did it again, it went horribly wrong. She did it again, it went horribly wrong. And they had no sympathy for the fact in the film. I don't remember if all the details are in the film, but she, dropped out of high school to take care of her mother who was battling cancer, who eventually died. So she never finished high school. She was very low income, and all the marketing is, you're going to do this wonderful thing, and you're going to help somebody, and by the way, we're going to pay you. And of course, in her naive mind, the first couple was a gay couple in France. So she thought, well, I won't do it for a gay couple in France. So I'll do it for a heterosexual couple in America. She never thought they were going to get divorced. That was just kind of like went sideways. She's like, wow. And then her last surrogacy was for a heterosexual couple in Spain. It's if we take the money out of this, we know women won't do it. And so everybody says, well, women are choosing this. Women want to do this. They want to help. It's, they have agency, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, that's bullshit. Take the money out of it and let's see what happens to the market. Yes, there will be altruistic surrogates, but there'll be a handful of them. There'll be a handful of them that want to help their sister or their best friend or, or somebody. But, in my travels and speaking to so many surrogates, they're groomed. They're never, ever told to say pregnant. They're not pregnant. Go on the website. They're on a journey. They're on a journey. So they're not supposed to say they're pregnant because that, associates them with the baby. You see, my bun, their womb, their oven. I'm just a 9-month babysitter. They wear these cute little T-shirts that just say things like little platitudes.
I'll admit.
So they were groomed, not, this is not your baby. This is not your baby. Do not get attached. You're just on a journey.
I also had trouble finding sympathy for her, and I can speak to that. That's interesting. And the details are even more. Her life story is really hard. Mm-hmm. And I have sympathy for her life story. Her brother killed her father when she was a kid because her father was so brutally abusive to her family that her brother ended up killing him in self-defense. Then their mother died, and then her brother killed himself. And it was a terrible story. She has a horrible, horrible, tragic youth. And then she's married to a guy who doesn't make a lot of money. He's a mechanic or something in construction. And they don't have a lot of money. They have one child of their own. And then she gets the idea to do this. And it is sort of they do it for the money. She and her husband discuss, they do it for the money. They have certain boundaries and parameters that they want to follow. The first one doesn't go well, not according to what they want. But then they do it again a couple of years later. She's really traumatized by the first one. Her counselor, her therapist actually hooks her up with a couple to do it for the second time, even though she's going to this counselor partly to get through the trauma of what happened to her the first time. The counselor's the one that suggests it and introduces her to this couple. Pimps her out. Exactly. And but I will say, I still don't have a ton of sympathy for her because I feel like, not for this reason, because we all have our reasons for doing things. And she's a woman who seems like she could have known right from wrong. She didn't have to make these choices. She chose them. And every step of the way, there's somebody making those kinds of choices, from the doctors to the parents we all make excuses for why this is okay. We all suspend our moral judgment because of X incentive. And so I think that there has to be radical responsibility on the part of every single person. And, so I will admit that I also struggled a little bit with sympathy, although it is a very human story. She's not a blameless victim in this.
Yeah, and to me, it gets back to sort of what we see happening in the trans space. You have these incredibly broken people that have, all kinds of comorbidities related to mental health, related to stressors, related to environment, whatever. The gatekeepers, the doctor should never have ever said you are capable and suitable to be a surrogate.
That's true.
You're financially on the brink. I mean, what we didn't show in the film because we didn't know when we filmed her, but I found out after the fact her husband had a horrible drug problem. So as soon as he would make money, the money was gone. She was just really like most women, you're just trying to put food on the table for your kids and a roof over their head. Not to make excuses, but you would think anybody who's doing an assessment, because they always say, if you go on the surrogate websites, they do this incredible assessment, this mental health assessment to make sure this woman is, stable and healthy and voluntarily doing this and isn't on the financial brink of ruin. She should never once, twice, three times been allowed to do this. What doctor would have looked at her history and said, sure, sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Like, do we protect people from their own bad decisions? Or
doctors should. They don't have to be complicit in helping you make bad decisions. Maybe they can't. She could have shopped around and found somebody else. I'm sure another bad actor that would have given her puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones or phalloplasty or whatever. You can shop around, but if a good doctor would have looked her in the face and said, let's get you the help you really need. Let's see what kind of services. She lives in South Dakota. Let's see what South Dakota has to offer a family that's financially destitute. Let's see what we can do to support you. I mean, why are women selling their eggs? They're selling their eggs on college campuses to pay their school debt.
Yes.
My good friend Rachel Morin, who's an ex-prostitute, a prostituted woman, says, why do women have to put a dick in their mouth to put food on their table? Why do women have to sell their eggs and rent their wombs so that they can, provide for their family? Men don't have to do that.
That's right. That's right. Well, and also, speaking of you're saying if you take the money out of it, people wouldn't become surrogates. I also think for a lot of women in abortions that aren't related to health, medical reasons, if those women had the emotional support and resources that they needed and the finances, that they also would not be having abortions. I think a lot of abortions would be prevented from that. And I've known women who are in relationships that appear to be very stable with a committed partner, and then they get pregnant and the guy just flees. And and I just think this is outrageous, even with now, sort of improved, child support laws, the way that the laws are calculated, they look at the guy's income and see what he can afford. And they have this calculation. Oh, okay, you're a school teacher. Well, you can afford to give the mother $300 a month. But nobody's saying, oh, what the mom can afford. Well, every cent that you have has to go to providing housing. What the heck? To me, it's completely baffling. The guy is either equally responsible or he's not. And I don't see how we can have restrictions on abortion when we're essentially saying, it's your problem. Just give it up for adoption. Adoption's an option. Like, that's so easy for people. And the guy, gets to, send a check for $300 or something, which what the heck does that pay for? Absolutely nothing. And if you're one of the people that's not, below a certain level, you're not eligible for subsidized daycare. So you literally don't have the money for it, but you can't get any money for it. And it's putting women in absolutely impossible positions. Absolutely impossible.
Yeah. And I think, as a matter of policy, the right has been perhaps more harsh in addressing those real needs that women have, because it's pull yourself up on by your bootstraps and work and don't get a handout. We don't need all these welfare mamas and blah 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 blah. Instead of looking at really, we need a country that has really good family policies. My daughter just went back from maternity leave. She got 6 months. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
And she got 6 months paid, leave, which she still had a hard time going back after 6 months. But,
Yeah.
but when you look at selling eggs and renting wombs, we don't pay people to donate their organs, and why don't we?
Yeah.
Because we're
Yeah.
concerned about the ethics.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's a
Who's
good
going
point.
to sell and who can afford to buy?
That's a
It's the
really
same thing.
interesting point.
But because it's babies, we were talking before we went live, because it's babies, we could become all schizophrenic. But we don't want people selling. And I'm a big fan of not selling organs. I'm not trying to promote we should be able to sell organs. But we don't want people making medical decisions that may not be in their best interest because they need finances.
Right.
Yeah.
You need to take finances out of the equation of making any kind of decisions for your health care or your health.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people are dying waiting for organs. I mean, what could be more urgent than somebody waiting for a kidney who's, basically being told you can't stay on dialysis the rest of your life. And if you don't get a kidney, you're going to die. But we don't change the law and say, well, let's start selling kidneys.
Yeah.
Right.
There's the right line of,
Right.
and we know it's the haves and the have-nots. Bill Gates will get his kidneys, and somebody down on Skid Row will be selling their kidneys. They'd sell them both if they could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jennifer, in the countries that don't allow surrogacy, what arguments have they used? Do they do this financial consideration, or they just do it's immoral, or like what basis have they been able to make that argument?
So if you look at European countries, because a lot of European countries have never allowed it. They didn't ban it. They just have never allowed it. So it wasn't something they had to take back. And it's mostly around the dignity of the body, the dignity of pregnancy, the dignity of maternal child health. France actually has, uses language that equates it to slavery. This woman is, basically bought and owned for 9 months. Everything she can do or can't do is dictated by who's ever paying her. When you look at the global South that legalized surrogacy and then walked it all back, most of those laws changed because women were truly being exploited, and children were too. Women were destitute women who couldn't even read, let alone understand a contract. In India, they would sign it with a thumbprint, or their husbands would sign it. Women were treated like chattel, moved away from their families and their communities during the pregnancy and put in like dormitory housing so pregnancy could be controlled and we could know that the product was going to be healthy at the end. Because as a poor woman, we wanted to make sure she's getting her vitamins, she's getting her 3 meals a day, she's getting clean water. And then once that baby's born, we throw her back to the village and we don't care about her health. There was quite a few stories where babies were left. The baby Gammy case, baby Gammy was a twin, and Gammy was born with Down syndrome. So the couple came from Australia to get the healthy little girl, but they left baby Gammy, who's still, as far as I know, being raised by the surrogate who gave birth. So it was more of those kinds of stories that happened in Nepal. All the Israeli homosexual gay men were coming to Nepal because at that time, Israel only allowed heterosexual couples to engage in surrogacy. And then Nepal had that horrible earthquake that sort of obliterated Nepal. And there were these pictures of these poor women that were surrogates, and these pictures of wealthy Israeli gay men flying in, to get their babies and then leaving these women behind in the destroyed.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's not a good PR look. So it's more the more impoverished countries restricted and limited based on those kinds of stories versus the Europeans that just see this as an affront to the dignity of women and the dignity of maternity, which I love. I mean, I remember showing my film Breeders in France, and I was like, the audience is just like lit up. We are the French. we don't treat women like this in France. And I'm like, Jean Valjean, I wanted to be waving my flags. And it was just like this incredible, I mean, it's just part of who they are as a country. You know, in America, we're cowboys, we're capitalists, you know, we're road, free markets, you know, and even if that means things that shouldn't be part of a free market, like babies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something you both said, Jennifer and Leslie. Leslie, you were talking about radical responsibility, and Jennifer, you were making the distinction between the wanted and the unwanted. And I think those are really key points to this. And every step along the way of from the moment a girl begins menstruation to menopause, every step of the way is so loaded with significance. And it's become so politicized that really every step is a landmine to somebody. But when you were talking about the unwanted versus the wanted, what that really struck me, and it's like that is a stark representation of where we're at as a culture. That should not be the determining factor of who gets to live, as far as I'm concerned. And I was always pro-choice. I'm still pro-choice, but in a much more limited way, because basically centered around this same issue. You know, at a certain point, you either have basic human dignity and dignity of the human being in nature in its essence, or you do not. And if you do not, sure, you can always find cases of a girl who was raped and couldn't get to a clinic and 36 weeks and blah, blah. You can always find these sort of outlier cases that make for good hysterical PR for one side of a cause or another. But that is not a way to base your morality. And just as assisted dying has turned into an absolute nightmare of, oh, you should kill yourself. Oh, have you ever thought about killing yourself? Oh, you have problems? Why don't you kill yourself? And us, the state, will enable this for you to kill yourself. I mean, it's something out of a dark comedy. It doesn't seem real. These two issues go hand in glove. And for me, being both secular and pro-choice and, completely modern and contemporary in that way, now I'm having to face the reality that actually the Christians and the Catholics had it right. And this is uncomfortable for me because I have not lived my life like that. And I've had all of this whole suite of experiences, including with IVF and this, that, and the other. And you have to really think, the warnings that we thought people, like cosmopolitan elites thought were hysterical fear-mongering of the how this would snowball, that all turned out to be true. So now we have Canada that's literally promoting killing people, and young women testifying in state legislatures or in Congress for abortion for any reason at any point. Mm-hmm. And women being used as chattel and selling off their offspring and their body parts, their eggs and their uteri. I mean, this is not a way to build a safe and healthy society. It can't be based on the wanted, unwanted. It cannot be based on the whims of a woman. It just can't. Yeah. Which is very unsettling for liberals.
And the wanted, not wanted is going to bleed into the assisted suicide, because pretty soon you're going to be a burden on society and you're a drain and you're not wanted and nobody comes to visit you in the nursing home. So you might as well just off yourself because you're just going to rot your days away. But, when you look at, I remember doing a debate many years ago, and I don't usually wade into the abortion issue because I see it as a third rail. And it just immediately people go, well, you're this and you're that. And I'm like, well, no, I'm right. I'm really a very nuanced person here. And I remember doing this debate at the San Francisco Commonwealth Club. And I spoke to a colleague of mine who was an OBGYN doctor before. And I was just doing this debate as a favor to a friend, because she couldn't do it. And it was like, I was up against Cynthia Gorney at UC Berkeley, who's written a book this fat on the history of abortion in America. And of course, I had two Planned Parenthood lawyers there. And I was sort of the other voice. And I just put on my nurse's cap. I said, listen, If you are a woman who is in a high-risk pregnancy, your life is at risk, your baby's life is at risk. This is a wanted child. You're in a high-risk hospital environment, and the medical team is doing everything they can to save your life, to save your baby's life, to keep you pregnant for as long as you can, so that you have the hopes of, delivering a child that's viable. And that's the reality, because this is a wanted child. So you're getting, Cadillac medical care. If it's an unwanted child, where do you go? You're not in some posh hospital being taken care of a medical. You're at Planned Parenthood, and I've been to Planned Parenthood and I've seen, the inside of what happens there. And there's no individual personal care. There's no, how are you doing today? There's no aftercare. It's just, in and out, in and out. And so we shouldn't deceive ourselves. That this wanted argument is a big point, and it dictates the kind of care the mother and the child get, just because it's a wanted child.
I'm really glad both of you are bringing up things about free market. And Jenny, the idea that we have, that the religious and spiritual constraints on culture in the past have played an important role. This is why I guess that the whole idea of radical responsibility, culture is built one person at a time and every person together. We are all deciding together what our values and our morals are. And if we are a culture of people whose morals can be just set to the side because of incentives or because of victim status or because of money or because of this is where I think the free market really falls apart. Every single one of us is responsible for the moral decisions that we make. The people who are, when I was in law school, I really thought that one of the interesting things that we got into quite a bit in studying tort law was the idea of joint and several liability. Like, just the lady who slips on the floor or trips over the crack, is she responsible 2%, 10%, 15%, 100% for her own fall? Is the homeowner who left the crack then didn't take care of it responsible 100% or just maybe 85%? What's going on there? And was there a kid coming by on a skateboard that distracted her and he's responsible partly? So, there's these ideas that lots of people bear responsibility for these things. And certainly in these kinds of situations where you have people making a lot of money, it's like the American food lobby. Look at this garbage food that we have here and all these fast food restaurants that advertise and make it super cheap and easy for people to eat terrible things all the time, even though they know full well they're filling you with stuff that's going to hurt your body. But then they seduce your children into eating it. It is their responsibility. They're doing something that's evil. It's reprehensible, but it's also the family's responsibility because you should know better. You do know better. Somewhere deep in you, you know better. We all know better. Yeah. And I think that it's crazy that we've gotten to a point where medical morality is dictated by consent. That's it. Consent and money. And it does go straight back to prostitution. You mentioned prostitution. I think that there's a line that goes through all of these things. And one of these days I'll learn how to really conceptualize and articulate it because I can see it, but I don't really know how to address it yet. There's something that goes straight from sex work, prostitution, all the way through maid.
Yeah.
It's sort of a nihilistic
renting yourself
death
out.
wish. Well, it's death. Go ahead, Jenny.
I'm working on a theory about this actually, and it's to do with the liberal worldview, and the liberal worldview that, to me anyway, seems to say and teach us that there can be no wrong pleasures, and if you want something, you must just the world should be arranged for you to have it. And there is no sense of self-denial. There is no sense of responsibility. There is no sense of discipline in that. And I've been writing a lot about how this pertains to sex. And I wrote this pamphlet. I'm going to be in London at the weekend giving a talk on it about these extreme sexual practices that have dominated online discourse and are now being taught in schools and all this stuff. But this, I think it's the same principle. The sexual liberals are siding with the sexual radicals because they don't feel like they should be denied their pleasures. And it's the same thing coming back to this idea that you don't feel that you should be denied parenthood. And I had infertility and I struggled with it very much. And it was incredible. It was the most painful thing I've ever experienced. But fundamentally, like you said earlier, Leslie, you're not entitled to become a mother. There is no law out there or no rule saying just because you want it, even if you want it really bad, and it is very sad and very tragic and very hard to deal with when you can't get it. That's sometimes the way the cookie crumbles, and you need to develop coping strategies. You need to develop whatever it is, spiritual practice or community advocate, whatever it is that will help you move through that suffering and come out the other end without having damaged the body of someone else. Okay? Because those two, like, you just because you want something doesn't mean you can have it. And that to me is a quintessential learning of adulthood. And in the United States in particular, that has been completely thrown out the window because we all should be indulged at all times and get everything we want at all times.
And then we start calling it rights too, right? So isn't this in this liberal worldview too? Suddenly it's not just wants, no, they're rights, which seems to enshrine it with some sort of extra.
Which is why I love Leslie saying radical responsibility, because it's always been very clear to me, you can't have rights without responsibilities. Without responsibilities, the rights are a nightmare. The rights are actually anarchy. They're a free for all. They have to be bonded closely to responsibility. You have to keep up your end of the bargain as a citizen. And that's, like you say, guys, whether you're poor and in really bad places, whether you're really sad because you can't have kids, all of those things, like that doesn't absolve you from your obligation to uphold your end of the bargain. It just doesn't. It's like the social contract.
And a lot of these ideas and beliefs about rights is fueling the transhumanist movement. We don't want to suffer. We don't want to get old. We want to live forever. We want to overcome immortality. We want to remake ourselves, so whether we need to understand, a more robust understanding of our anthropology, we are going to get old. We are going to suffer. Life is going to be hard. We're all going to die, and as soon as we just embrace the realities of our finiteness, we can maybe relax and enjoy life.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me like there's a new morality, and it could be described as long as there's consent, it's moral. And the real sin is to tell somebody no, they can't have something, or to judge somebody or something. That to me seems to be the new morality.
Bingo.
And somebody gave, I can't remember, it might have been Rod Dreher in one of his articles was saying, well, if consent in and of itself creates morality, would you think that it's moral? And he gave the example of this guy hired another guy to kill him and I think eat him. Yeah. I mean, really bizarre. And he was And Rod Dreher was arguing, and I think correctly, that even though both parties were consenting to this bizarre arrangement, that it would not be viewed as moral. And, I would agree with that, but it seems like that's kind of the point where we are in the United States. If both people say it's okay, then it's okay.
But 100%.
That does seem
I've written about that case as well.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, like death. There are some things that we agree you cannot consent to. There are some things that we agree culturally, and perhaps even legally, that we can't consent to. Like I can't hire someone to kill me, right? But are there...
Kill yourself.
What's that?
You can't consent to kill yourself.
You can't even kill yourself. Right, exactly. So it seems like maybe it's time for a discussion around what else can you not consent to give away? What else of your life, what pieces of your life should you not be morally or legally allowed to consent to give away?
No.
Very well said.
Wow, this is just such a powerful topic. Thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer. It's great to
I
talk
loved
with you.
it. It was great.
Yeah.
I feel
Any
like
last thoughts?
My brain
Yeah.
got a good workout.
Me too. Anybody have last thoughts or anything that we missed or some way to tie this up in a bow?
I think you did it perfectly just there.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
a perfect tie.
I could have a thought, but it would not. Yeah. You just put it together.
Well, Jennifer, any recommendations or things that you want people to go and check out now?
It didn't come up, but there is a wonderful online document that's free that the President's Council on Bioethics did under the George Bush administration. It's called Beyond Therapy. And you can just Google, I think it's housed on the Georgetown University website, Beyond Therapy. If you just Google like Beyond Therapy with Leon Cass.
Leon Cass?
Yeah, he was the head, of the committee. And it's a wonderful book that it's kind of like with Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death. It sort of talks about we want ageless bodies, we want immortal souls, we want happiness, and we want perfect children. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful report. It's a book size report, but you can get the PDF for free online. I read it probably every couple of years. Just to remind myself. And it's, because if something's good, it's timeless. So even though it was written many years ago now, it's still a very good reminder of, trying to ground us so that we're not pursuing folly, pursuing the good versus folly.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that recommendation. And I'll put links to your work in the description of this video. And I just really, really enjoy speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining
Thanks
us.
for having me back, and nice to see you, Jenny.
Nice to meet you. Really honored.
You guys have a great day.
All right.
You too. Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.